So thank you so much for being here, and yeah, it's my great pleasure. I'm very excited. Hello. I'm very excited to tell you about some of the work we've been doing on optimal fees in automated market makers. So whenever I say automated market makers, for those of you who don't know, although many people in the room would know more than me, automated market makers are, think of them as a venue for trading. So you know LOBs, limit order books. So this is just another way of doing trading. I'll describe what the what the characteristics are when trading in these venues. And a natural question to ask is, how does the optimal fee would look like in these venues? For those of you who have been following the development of the area, you would know about Uniswap v4, where LPs now have the capacity of defining their own fee structure if so they wished. So this would try to answer the question, well, what will happen to the market now that LPs have that? What if we understand the optimal fee structure, maybe first from a monopoly point of view, maybe we will have something to say about what will happen to the market after this implementation. Of course, going to the data and checking that the model says something sensible will be a next step. Everything here is going to be theory, but hopefully with the pictures, things will be as clear as possible. So please stop me if something I say is not quite clear. And any feedback more than welcome. The second part of the paper, there are two papers. The second part we posted last week. So if there are any comments, please let us know. Right, so I should say this is joint work with Leandro, who is a PhD student of Martin Herzegen. Martin was at Warwick. Now he moved to Stuttgart. So he's a professor at Stuttgart. Right, so let's dive in. If I can. There we go. Before I start, this is what I hope I convey by the end of the talk. I hope these are, there are 5 takeaways that I hope to convince you by the end of the talk. So the first one is an important one. So constant fees, saying I charge 3% of whatever you trade, or 1%, or whatever the percentage is. Constant fees are only going to be optimal in the limiting case where price formation happens in the venue. So I think that's, to me at least, that was interesting in its own right. Otherwise, constant fees are not optimal. Then another thing that we found quite nice is that linear fees do a fantastic job when approximating the optimal fee schedule. The optimal fee schedule is not going to be linear, as we will see, at least in our model of the world. But linear fees are going to do a fantastic job. So just controlling slope and intercept is good enough if you want to design some fee structures. Thirdly, there are going to be 2 very distinct regimes, and I'm going to spend a lot of time on the intuition of these regimes because you can interpret them in 2 different ways. But long story short, there is a regime in which I penalize arbitrageurs, so I raise fees to anybody coming to arbitrage the pool, and I make it cheaper for noise traders to trade, so to push prices in the wrong direction. So you can interpret that in another way. You could interpret it as the venue in the optimal fee structure of the venue is to encourage the price to move in the opposite direction of where it should be moving if you believe price formation is happening in the centralized exchange. So I'll go into a lot of detail into these points when we get to the pictures. And when we go beyond the monopoly case and we study the game, it's going to be exactly the same result. So the only difference is going to be that now it's not around the oracle price or the centralized exchange price. So the gravity pull is going to move to a weighted average of all of the prices across venues and the centralized exchange, where the weighting happens according to how much of the order flow is driven by price differences between the venues. So yes.
Why are those markets also big?
Yeah, so at present, it is true. So there are many inefficiencies. So some of them have to do with block times in Uniswap in 12 seconds. Some of them have to do with gas fees. Some of them have to do with other inherent problems. But that doesn't have to be the case in the future. So I'm trying to step aside from the practical issues with those venues, and I'm trying to study mathematically what would happen in equilibrium as these venues coexist. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Very briefly, could you explain a little bit more about what it means when the price is formed in the venue? So what does it mean?
That's a great question. So in our model, I'm going to have arrivals of trade coming depending on how your prices are with respect to the other venue. So if your price is very cheap with respect to the other venue, then I'm expecting people are going to want to buy here and sell here. Yeah. So as that friction disappears, that I'm going to take a parameter to go to 0. As that friction disappears, the optimal fee structure is going to do this, and it's going to become constant. I'll show you the plots. Yeah, that's a great question. So lastly, there are winners and losers whenever everybody starts creating their own shops, their own venues to trade. So of course, a strategic liquidity taker is going to be better off. A person just sort of monitoring where to send the trades, and some person has to execute, 10 orders of ETH, and then, if this person chases the best quote, is going to get a better deal. Of course, the revenue per DEX is going to go down, and noise traders, it depends. It depends on the overall liquidity that gets processed by the venue. So these are the takeaways. So, right, hopefully I'll deliver that by the end of today's talk. So, right, so here's what we would, most of you, I would assume but in case you don't, so an automated market maker is just a decentralized exchange, which is governed by a smart contract. So sort of codes that runs in the backbone of it. So I'm going to be focusing on a particular type. I'm going to be focusing on constant function market makers. For those of you familiar with the different versions of Uniswap, all of the math is going to be written in V2 for simplicity. Of course, it can be extended and it would still hold for concentrated liquidity. And given that we're doing dynamic fees, you can interpret that as the V4 version of the story. Right, so I'm going to be thinking of two assets throughout. Whenever I say X, I think of dollars. And whenever I say Y, I think of ETH, or think of any risky asset. Let's think of Apple shares. There is no inherent reason why this wouldn't, all of the math works for any two assets. It doesn't have to be cryptos. NASDAQ could implement this tomorrow if so they wished. So the mathematics of how everything works is in terms of a trading function, at least in the V2 version of the story. And this trading function just dictates how trades happen. I want to deposit some dollars and take out some ETH. Well, I need to do so agreeing with the trading function. The trading function, the most popular one is this one. It's called constant product market makers. All of the results we have hold for anyone. So we're going to work in great generality. Of course, for the numerics, I'm going to focus on this one. But there is no inherent reason why any other one would hold. So here's the bits that matter. So how is it that trading happens? So before and after a trade, you need to respect that you don't change the function. That's why it's called constant function. The only people allowed to change the function, or the number of X in the pool, the number of dollars sitting in the pool, and the number of ETH sitting in the pool, before and after a trade, have to satisfy that under the function. Imagine the constant product function, so just multiplying these two things, they have to be the same before and after the trade. So, for example, if I know that I want to deposit $10, this function, given that before and after have to be the same, that would tell me what's the number of Y I can take out of the pool. Okay, so of course, if I have to respect this formula, so this is for depositing X and this for withdrawing X from the pool. If I have to respect this formula, then if I give you any amount delta X or delta Y that I want to deposit or withdraw, you can do a calculation, compute the amount of X that you would receive or pay. And if you divide one over the other, that would tell you the exchange rate of that transaction. Yeah. So I did that calculation for you. So here is the transaction. So this is the price you would get if you were to withdraw delta Y from the pool. So overall, I'm going to try and be consistent with notation. So minus is for withdrawing. When I talk about fees, if I put an M, it's going to be for minus, is the fee to withdraw. And P is for plus, is to deposit in the pool. So these are the exchange rates that this transaction would convey. Now, another interesting quantity is the marginal exchange rate. So if you take this to 0, then of course it just becomes the derivatives minus the derivative of the level function. And by the way, I didn't say what the level function was, but the level function is just, given that I need to keep this function fixed, it tells me what X is in terms of Y. Okay? So it's a very important function. So we're going to be using this function a lot, var 5. Okay, so these are the mathematics of V2. Hopefully, hopefully they make sense. Given that I want to talk about fees, I need to tell you how fees work. So here's how they're going to work in our model. So this, remember, was the exchange rate you will have to the exchange rate you will receive when withdrawing this many units of ETH from the pool. So this is the exchange rate in dollars, like the number of dollars per unit for this transaction. The fee I'm going to charge is going to be a multiple of that. And I'm going to denote it with M if I'm withdrawing from the pool and P if I'm depositing to the pool. So if I'm depositing ETH to the pool, this is the effective exchange rate. So the effective exchange rate is going to be a little bit less. So let's say this is 1%. So it will be 99% of the exchange rate you would have received if there were no fees. These guys there are going to be the control that I'm going to have in my control problem. I want to optimize over those guys. Of course, I want to set them as close to 1 as possible and as close to infinity as possible. Yeah, in principle. Of course, the trade-off is that if I charge you a lot of fees, then nobody's going to come and trade. Yeah, so that's the key trade-off. So I want to understand how to set these guys in a continuous time fashion, in a controlled way, where everything depends on state variables, everything is stochastic. That's what I want to do. Right. So far I haven't lied to you. Now I'm going to introduce what our model is. So here you can take it with a pinch of salt. So in our world, the way we're going to think about this problem is as follows. I want to talk about arrivals of trades. I want to think, if you've read Avellaneda and Stoikov, I know many people in the room have, and you have worked on this actually. So if you've read this paper, it's about how do you model the intensity of arrivals with respect to how generous your quotes are. So if your quotes are not generous, then you get fewer arrivals. If they are more generous, you get more arrivals. That's the sort of intuition. So I want to do something similar. I want to think about intensity of arrivals, the intensity with which people who come to the pool and deposit ETH, or with the intensity with which people who come to the pool and withdraw ETH. To do that, we found this very tractable way. I'm just going to discretize the possible values that the ETH reserves can take. There are not going to be any requirements on how large or small that has to be. You can have a discretization that is every 0.00001, if so you wish. in the experiments I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a discretization of 1 by 1 to keep things simple. But that is our way of thinking about the problem. I'm going to have a grid in Y, and the actions in this world, the stochastic actions, are trades that push me that way or trades that push me that way in the Y grid. And the Y grid is the number of ETH that the pool holds. If I keep the liquidity fixed for a second, there are extensions we have worked out for when liquidity is also, LPs also add and withdraw. For now, let's keep it fixed. If I keep the liquidity fixed, knowing the Y's, the number of Y units in the pool tells me immediately what the marginal price is, what the number of X units is, yeah? Because the depth is fixed, yeah? So that's the key variable that I'm going to be monitoring. That's the key variable that the optimal fee is going to depend on. Right, so here's our model. I hope I can convince you that it makes sense. Yes?
Is the reference price, how reliable is it given that it's such a long?
That's a very good question. So in the numerical experiments, I'm going to compute the grid in Y according to how fine I want the changes in the marginal price. And I'm going to have a granularity of 0.1, I think. But it can easily be extended to a granularity of 10 to the minus 5 and have the same grid that in euro dollar, But it's a very, very mild restriction to have this grid. I have zero. I don't have any constraints on how large it can be. Right. So here is the model, our model for the intensities, and Sasha is an expert on this sort of model. So I hope this makes perfect sense. But let me walk you through it. So the intensity with which people are going to push the number of Y units to the right. So that's depositing Y units, withdrawing dollars from the pool, is going to increase whenever the price to do so, including fees, is above ST. What does that mean? So if the price in the pool, including fees, is above ST, then it's profitable to send something to the pool, to sell to the pool. To sell to the pool means to deposit Y units to the pool. That's why there is a plus there. And then withdraw dollars instead and go and do an arbitrage in the SEX, in the centralized exchange. So that's the rationale, and the opposite for the other side. Now, I hope that I've conveyed then that the fees show up in two places. The more fees you charge, the more money you put in your pocket, so that makes you happy. But the more fees you charge, the less competitive these numbers are going to be with respect to the prices in the SEX, to the point where nobody would trade with you if they are too expensive. So this is it. I want to maximize cash. I want to maximize fees collected. That's the one thing I want as an LP. I want cash in my pocket for providing liquidity. So every time there is a plus trade, how much do I collect? Well, I collect. This is the price per unit. This is number of units, and this is the fee collected, 3% or 2%. But it's going to be a control variable. So I want to maximize that. That's all of the cash. That's the cash of the LP. All of the concavity of the problem is there. It's only there because the higher this is, the happier I am. But of course, the higher this is, the lower the intensity of this is going to be. In the weak formulation control problem that I'm solving, of course. Everything is with respect to a probability measure under which the intensity of these guys is going to decrease whenever I increase P. Yeah? Whenever I make my things more expensive, the intensity is going to decrease. Now, just for the fun of it, because I hope you trust me that all of the concavity is there already, but just for the fun of it, and just to understand what's going on, I'm going to have this penalty. And I'm going to compute the solutions with that penalty. And I'm interested in this penalty. Imagine a venue whose mission is, I want to keep prices aligned. It makes me happy to keep prices aligned. it makes me happy if in my pool, the prices are aligned to the centralized exchange. The only reason I included that there, well, we did, is to show you that the optimal fee structure is going to completely flip. So what in optimality you would do if you want to maximize cash is not at all in line with keeping prices aligned. It's quite the opposite. And that's like one of the key messages I had at the beginning. So, right, so this is a control problem I want to solve. Here are my control variables. The stochasticity is in terms of this stochastic intensities with which these things are happening. And I want to compute the optimal controls of this control problem. So I won't bore you with the math, but you can. And for those of you who have worked with Avenant-Stoikov type models, this should feel familiar. 1/k in Avenant-Stoikov plus the function before and after a trade. Well, that looks a lot like this as well. Function before and after a trade. So this is in feedback form, of course. We need to still take these guys, plug it back into the HAP, wherever there was a soup. Now you know what the soup is. You plug it back, and you have a massive PD that then you cross your fingers and you hope you can solve. So let me show you the two different ways in which we're going to solve the problem. Again, these are techniques that have been used by people in the room, so I won't spend too much time describing them, but you know, the first approach is going to be a very naive approach. If you take ST to be constant, so not a state variable. Oh, by the way, I didn't say what the dynamics of ST were, but ST is just a Brownian motion, okay, an arithmetic Brownian motion. But if you take it to be constant, to be a parameter, and you solve the problem, and then you plug in back the ST and hope for the best, well, it turns out that Frankenstein is a very, very, very good proxy for the optimal strategy. Another approach is what people in the market making literature have done, which is to do a quadratic expansion of the exponential terms. So let me show you the exponential terms, these ones. You do a quadratic expansion, and then the problem becomes a linear quadratic control problem. You solve the Riccati, you solve the control problem, and you're in safe ground, on safe ground. So long story short, both solutions give you the same intuition, the same insights, even the same level. It just looks a little bit different in the corners that you never reach. So it's safe to say that what I'm going to show you is the real thing. So let me show you the real thing. For the numerics, as I said, I'm going to do constant product. And I'm going to compute a grid like this. And the beauty of this grid is that it's going to have jumps of 0.1 in Z in the price. If you want a jumps of 0.00001, then just plug 0.0001 there. And it will be exactly the same. You will have to recalibrate all of the parameters, of course. But let's just do this grid for now. And this is what we obtained. So let me zoom in. And let's try to understand the intuition of what's going on. Because this is what we found is, to us, the most interesting part of the paper. So this line here, so the pool starts at 1,000 units. Let's have simple numbers. 1,000 units, the exchange rate is 100, so the price is 100, okay? So that means that there are 100 times 1,000 units of dollars in the pool. And this line here represents the current price in the centralized exchange. So I align the price in the centralized exchange to be 100 as well. Now, B is the fee that you would charge to go right in the pool. The fee you would charge if somebody wants to deposit to the pool. M is the fee you would charge if somebody wants to withdraw from the pool. Minus and plus. Now, here's what this tells me. If I'm to the right of Y, this is a region where the marginal price is below ST. Okay? The farther you go here, the lower the marginal price is with respect to ST, because you have more units of ETH, less dollars, the price per ETH decreases. Okay? Now, what this is telling me is that if somebody were to come and want to move this to the right, in other words, push the price even farther away from the real price, which is ST, if somebody wants to go, to push this to the right, I'm going to charge that person this much fees. So what that tells me is that in optimality, you say, oh, you want to push the price away, please do so. I'll make it cheaper for you to do so. Why? Because the moment you do so, you're going to be charging a lot more also to arbitrageurs and realigning prices as well. So, you would charge fees going that way and fees going this way. So your core incentive is just to push prices away so that you do round trips. Okay, so the story is similar. So here is if you want to push the price that way, which will be to realign prices, then you're going to charge them more. The story is exactly the same here. If you want to go to the right, then I'm going to charge you a lot. So that's the plus. And if you want to go left, I'm going to charge you very little. So what is that doing? We interpreted that as either increasing volatility, because you're incentivizing going that way and just pushing the price away, really. That's what the fees are doing. I'm going to make it cheaper for you to push the price away, if so you wish. And if you want to realign, I'm going to charge more. Alternatively, you can think of it as I penalize arbitrageurs and I make it cheap for noise traders. Who is a noise trader? Somebody that's trading regardless of whether I'm underpriced or overpriced. Sure, okay, I'll make it cheaper for you. And for arbitrageurs, let me charge you more. Yeah? So, yes.
So effectively, a rational trader will only look at the top curve or the bottom, because why would I trade in the DEX if sex is cheaper for me?
Yeah, so exactly. So this is now you go back to the two venue problem, yeah. But you could think of a world where people would trade in this venue because they sign contracts with this venue in a wider adoption sort of world. There could be other reasons, but yeah, in principle, if everybody is monitoring prices and all trades are only arbitrage type trades, then yeah, why would you trade? Of course,
that makes sense, because then the profitability would be high for the AMM, because you'll only be on the top shape, so you're always having
Yeah.
fees that much.
100%. Yeah. Okay, so that's take it. Yes.
Inventory, because you mentioned the size of book, obviously it will
Yep.
influence your decision from the slope.
Yeah. So the inventory of all of the y-axis here represents the number of ETH units in the pool. So that will be the sort of the inventory in the risky asset, if you wish, of this this liquidity provider holding this pool, for example. And the number of dollars will be the number of cash units that they are holding and have.
Presenting the risk, so we mark it for one way.
Yeah, but in this case, given that I'm just maximizing cash over the horizon, so you can think of this as I'm not accounting, I'm just maximizing profits at this point. If you include in the penalty function some deviations from the SEX price, then that could account for some sort of risk or running inventory penalty.
I mean, I was just going to follow on that. I mean, you might be optimizing the fees like this, but it might be that you might be building up some inventory somewhere.
Yeah.
So overall position of the LP might be actually, you might be maximizing the fees like this, but the inventory might be costing him more risk and so.
Yeah. So that's a very good point. So you could think of, I'm going to turn on the penalty function in just a second, and everything is going to flip. Yep. But yeah, you can think of that as risk control. Yes.
Say that you're going to switch on the penalty. Does that mean that you can use the penalty to control inventory? So you choose your.
Correct. Yeah, because you being close to 100 will be meaning keeping inventory close to 1,000. Yeah. So now, okay. Oh, this is before I show you how things flip. I lied. I'm going to show you first that as this friction disappears, the fees become constant. And you can see it here. So I'm just going to turn off gently the K parameter, and I'm going to readjust the the quotes because, it's not true that if the other venue stop existing, then infinite flow will come here. So I'm going to rescale that. And what you see is that it becomes flat. So this effect there that survives at the end is just to push you away from the boundaries, because when you reach the boundary, just collect fees on one side, yeah, because you cannot go beyond the boundary. So of course, in any real implementation, this will be plus infinity and this will be 0. So you wouldn't reach those. So you can think of just it being a constant fee structure. Right. So now I'm going to turn on the penalty parameter. So in dotted lines, I'm going to be plotting one of the two. So it's irrelevant which one is which. But let's just look at what happens as I turn up the penalty parameter. So if it's 0, I have no risks constraint. I don't care about being aligned to the sex. So if I don't care about being aligned to the sex, these are my quotes, for example. So if you want to push the price that way, no, sorry, this will be to push this way. But anyway, so instead of going like this, if you crank it up all the way, you can see that the dotted line is doing this. So it changes completely from this, like from this to this. Okay? So in other words, let me rephrase that. So this one is making it, so let me see which one is which, not to get confused. Right, so in dotted line, this is minus, okay, minus. Okay, so this is minus. This is to go to the left. If you want to go to the left, I'm charging you a lot, okay? Now, the moment you crank up the penalty parameter, now I'm going to charge you very little. And before, when I was charging very little, now I'm going to charge a lot. So it's just flipping. And of course, if before the intuition was that it was optimal to push prices away because of the round trip arguments, now what you're doing is just don't push prices away. If you want to push the price away, I'm going to charge you more. If you want to realign prices, I'm going to charge you less, because now I care about prices being aligned. Yep. Sorry?
Maybe you have a simple linear formula.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will have to look. You mean in the paper?
Yeah, in the paper, because this intuition and linear dependence, they invite you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we should give it explicit, like a good yeah. Right. So let me show you some numbers as well. So optimal and linear, exactly the same fee revenue. Here you're leaving over 100 basis points on the table. That's the takeaway from this plot. So optimal and linear, amazing. Why? Because it's locally linear. And remember, as you move the state of the pool, a linear approximation will do a very good job. You will never go to the boundary. So, this is just the takeaway of this table. Now, let me tell you what the new part is, which is what we posted a couple of weeks ago. So again, any comments more than welcome. This is the first time I present this, so let's see if it makes sense. So I want to now study competition. I just had before, everything I showed you was one monopoly LP. I'm the only one. This is my pool. This is my world. People come and buy from me whenever I'm cheap. People come and sell whenever I'm too expensive. That was the setup. Now, I want many pools to compete, and I also want to have the sex. So what would change? I'm going to show you the math for 2 venues. In the paper, we have the M venues, but of course, let's keep things simple. And all of the intuition is already in the 2 venue case. So let me show you the case for 2 venues. So again, let's keep liquidity fixed. Let's just play around with fees. LPs are not adding or withdrawing liquidity. That can also be studied. It becomes a lot more complicated in the multiplayer case, but you can trust me for now that it can be studied. Each of them has their own function. Each of them has their own level function. I is the venue. It could be A or B. And now each of them has their own grid. So there you go. These are the grids of each of them. So they are, I is for can be A or B, so venue A or venue B, and they are going to coexist. So everything is as it was before, so I'm not going to bore you again with the definitions. But now the fees are going to depend on both the state of your pool and the state of the other pool. The beauty about this, for those of you who have studied games, you know, is amazing when everything is full information, and it's really, really bad when things are not full information. Here, everything is full information, because you see everything. You do see these state variables in real time. So everything is full information. The fee of venue 1 to M, remember it was to go left, and the fee to go right of venue I is going to depend on the state of the first pool and the state of the second pool. Here I used I and J just for generics because it extends to the general case of M play. Now, as before, these are the fees to sell, the fees to go left, the fees to go right, and now they depend on these two state variables. If you set up this control problem, you keep track of the counting processes of each of the venues, how many buys, how many sells, how many times you went right, how many times you went left in each of the venues. Then, and again, if you believe our model again is just how generous is your price with respect to the external price, and how generous is your price with respect to the other venue price. How much people monitor these other venues is encoded here. You know, the lower this is, the less relevance people pay to this difference and the less arrivals. Yeah.
Is your menu for reference price influenced by this?
No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. I would love to be able to make SD control to some extent, but that's definitely work in progress. We have not solved that, no. But that's a very good point. Right, so if you believe this model, the good news, which of course is not true, we're not accounting for the impact of trades happening and alignments happening in the sex as well. But if you believe this model, then you can compute the Nash equilibrium, and you can implement these ones, you can deploy everything again, and the takeaway is exactly what I said at the beginning. I'm going to show you plots in a second, but it's going to be, well, now, of course, the optimal fees depends on both my position and your position and the external, but the same two regime structure remains. The only difference is that the center of gravity is not going to be ST anymore. It's going to be now a weighted average between ST and the competitor's price. And you can see that here. So same plot as before. This is for venue 1, okay? Let's study one venue 2, just without loops or generality. This is when prices are perfectly aligned. Now I'm going to move the price of venue 2. This set there is the price of venue 2. And I pushed it to the right. So you can see that the center of gravity changed from the ST price to now somewhere in between. So it's some sort of weighted average now. So exactly the same intuition as before. And this is just to show you that, of course, a strategic liquidity taker is going to be better off. We did a bunch of experiments. The way we did the experiments is now, you know, there is 1,000 ETH in the world because that's all the supply, or, you know, 1,000 units of gold in the world. And now we split it in 500, 500, or 3 venues will be 300 and 333, you know, and so on. And we studied how is a strategic liquidity taker better off? Of course, yes. This person is going to be chasing what's the best price, and is going to get a better deal if they sort of proactively look for that. And then we try to study what happens to just the noise traders trading in these venues, and the same sort of takeaway holds as before. Optimal and linear are perfect. You leave over 100 basis points on the table if you do constants. And this is it. So if you're interested in reading a bit more, so these are the 2 papers of Leo. who is in the job market. So there you go. So any comments more than welcome. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes for questions.
Yeah.
So in your many body model, where you have multiple maybe I missed this, but in this many body model, you assume that the values that you're modeling are all the values that exist, or assuming there's some external values that.
So all of the venues we're modeling are players in the stochastic game we're trying to solve. So in the case of 2 venues, there will be, you know, me and Konark, and then we both have a venue and we're competing. We both are rational. We are both optimizers. He's trying to work out the best fee structure, accounting for the prices in my venue. I'm trying to work out mine. And then we work out what the Nash equilibrium is, which is a point where if both, you know, if I'm playing that strategy, then Konark has no incentives to deviate from his strategy, and vice versa. So, yeah.
So that in this case, there doesn't exist any form of collusion behavior.
That's a great question. So no, not in this Nash equilibrium. Yep.
But is that because there doesn't, is that because even though you said that you're defining 2 players, so each of you are 1 player each, there still exists a 3rd player, because otherwise there doesn't
So
exist.
yeah, it's, I guess this under the sort of the assumptions of the stochastic intensities and the strict concavity each performance criterion has in the control variable. Yeah.
So then could you, apologies for the question.
No.
If you model, let's say, up to n different venues, and you assume n to be relatively large, then in this case, and you technically can assume that all these combination of these n venues control most of the trading. In that case, would there be collusion between all n venues?
So we try to study, those are all very good questions, by the way. We try to study the limiting case of the number of venues goes to infinity, and it's easier said than done. So there is no infinity amount of liquidity in the world, and you have to readjust intensities, trades, so like everything has to be reassessed as you increase the number of players. So the parameters in the model would not be the same with 1 or 2 venues or with 3 venues. So then taking a limit, it's not like all these parameters don't depend on the number of venues. So it's easier said than done. But yeah, we are trying to work that out as well.
Roughly, so if the price actually are different, so one actually so many homes and differs the price from what is actually inside the finance price. But imagine a black swan situation where maybe the P5 takes the rock before the actual finance point, and so actually the price is really going to zero, going like really down. Am I not doing something against actually the bid provider, because actually I'm not giving fees to you because actually you're going down, but at the same time you're decreasing the value of my assets because it's like everybody is putting question. So in this case, I'm actually favoring this kind of situation. So how can I prevent it?
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, I don't think this is something we can study with this, but I can point you in maybe these papers or other papers where the impermanent losses and the sort of the fee collectors are the trade-off that you want to balance. And I think it's more suitable for these sort of frameworks. Yeah, so I think if you have a look at these ones, for example, that might be what you're looking for. Yep, thank you.
Maybe this is a stupid question. I'll try this nonetheless. So if in the end, in the situation where I have multiple vendors, the equilibrium is a Nash equilibrium, how does the decentralization differ from a centralized price? And moreover,
if in the end we're all gonna drift towards the Nash equilibrium, what gives the advantage in a decentralized system where I will nonetheless, being the owner of one vector, try to attract more market share than what is allocated to me through the Nash?
First of all, those are very, very hard questions. Both of them. So first, let me start saying that decentralized aspect of it is something that I don't touch on. Like, I never mentioned blockchains. I never mentioned. All of this is sort of, I'm thinking of them as venues that NASDAQ could implement, or we could implement and make popular if people wanted to trade in them. So I'm trying to think about these sort of trading rules. How do they work, and how would a smart contract on fees work if it's set to maximize revenue? But of course, the reason why all of this is appealing is on the decentralization aspect of.
What I meant by decentralization is that I don't have a market maker. I don't have a main market maker that features like a centralized unit. So I have all these venues.
Yeah.
I'm not making a distinction whether it's blockchain based or not. But I have all these venues. So some of this reminds me where you have a lot of dark pools.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How do you set the margins and the fees, right?
Yeah.
So what we learn is that in the end, we're gonna all drift towards a Nash equilibrium. And we become homogenized. So in a sense, that price that we are going to move to, the Nash equilibrium fees implied price, serves that as a centralized, so as a unique market maker essentially, where everybody else becomes a market taker. So that's where my question comes from.
Okay, I see.
The longer question is, even though we have various venues, by virtue of the trading that is not in isolation, so I'm going to set my fees by considering what my competitors do, we're automatically going to then agree on what could be construed as a centralized.
Yeah, I think, no, it's a great point. I think this sort of weighted averages of prices would then become the centralized price, or the price, and it would be a similar story to what you have in LOPs, where multiple LPs are competing, and then what is the price? Well, some micro price, or okay, that's a good point.
There's still nobody outside, so we may have a few more minutes for questions until somebody knocks. Maybe a follow-up question, if I understand correctly, some of the assumption, maybe not. But so would that be potentially a large end limit for the number of venues? I don't know if the question refers to you consider 2 venues, or if you consider 10 or 20 or 100 or similar.
So it's something we could see when going to 3.
Okay.
I didn't include plots for 3, but in the paper there are plots for 3. Something I can tell you is that this gravity pull will be a weighted average of the 3 prices. And if you go to 10, it should be a weighted average of 10. So that should still be respected to some degree. Apart from that, we have not many more results on the limits, I'm afraid. But this is the conclusion we have up until now.
That's good to know there are still things to do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think there's somebody.
Leandro,
maybe not.
it's theoretically impossible. What about practically?
What about?
Practically.
Practically.
Yeah, because practically.
Oh, yeah. So, well,
then it will still be. It's just.
So I guess practically we can look at what has happened in LOBs, and we can look at.
But LOBs are different.
100%. Yeah, they are different. But it's a
partial information. That's not.
100%. I agree. Yes. Nonetheless, it could be a first indication of what could happen. And in many markets, you have 6 market makers, and that's all it takes. In some others, you have more.
At the conference, we have seen that.
Yeah.
Good example of how you propagate the information essentially from the. Well,
Yeah. So, yeah, that's another good question. How would this look like in practice? So, yep.
I take this figure once
Yep.
again, thank you.
Thank you.
Because I invite you to the next seminars of the series, you can find